The Chinese student class had more advance of the learning the subject. They had more resource to learn the subject, and moreover, the content of textbook was much easier to them to understand. And the example in textbook were much familiar to them than to Tibetan students. As for the Tibetan students who were taught in Chinese language, at first they had a language problem to understand the concepts. Same as I did when I was learning the subject. Another major problem that at that time was that Chinese language had become very fashionable, and my students showed little interest knowing the concept in Tibetan language. Although I tried my methods and made a class more interesting way, it was hard to improve these students' performance. Later, I will show the chart about those taking final exam or three different level, the three classrooms. For the pilot class students, their textbook was directly translated from the Chinese textbook. They did not have the language problem to read the textbook and do the writing work. Therefore, their conceptual abilities were much higher than the other Tibetan class. Comparing to their two classes, pilot class students did not have any extra resource to help them on the subject, so as a teacher, I had to develop my own material to help the student to understand better. Here is some of the what I developed, the structure of the flower and its Tibetan stanzas and the definition. This is here I listed some of my methods that I used to teach the pilot class. For some long and difficult, maybe later you can look at this textbook. Sometimes when they definitely give some definition and description of some plants or animals in those textbooks, usually have several pages, and it's kind of given a definition. And then I try to write the other side, and I try to come out like this, written in Tibetan like a standards way, standard. This is one of the example. I'm using the Tibetan standards. We're using the standards, reciting the content is common Tibetan culture. It made it very easy for the student to remember the definition. This is what I did, back to 1991, and this is basically it's about the one of the plant, the flower of the structure of the flower of the celery cabbage. And then they wrote Jiangdou Jiange Guoglip Shi Seto Jiange Demoshi. So this writing like this style, then students can easily to read, easily to understand, and easily to memorize. And then when the text exam comes, then when I let them to write some definition for them, then they will recite this. Then through this, then they can make it more a definition through this most easy. I think it really works well for the students. And but for the Tibetan student who taught in Chinese, then it's very difficult. Because first of all, their Chinese, the language, level is so low, so there's no way to come out such, writing style. Secondly, I usually did not focus much on the example which were not familiar to the students in the textbook. Instead, I try to find some content example which were familiar to Tibetan students. For example, sometimes in textbook when we talk about animals, so they give some like a water buffalo, how the size of the water buffalo and how the body shape looks like, and also the structure of the water buffalo. Then it give the Tibetan students kind of because they never saw the water buffalo in Tibet. So I try to change this the yak to the student, because basically water buffalo and yak are mammal, so same comes from the same family, so there's no difference, like between these two, animals. So that's why I try to bring them their interest to learning this subject. And I give them young as an example, so they got excited to learn about the structure of the animal they knew. Thirdly, I like to raise students' interest to learn about the animal and the plants, so I told them some of the folk story and the local sayings. Then try to relate it the main topic in this chapter. In this basically for example, in class sometimes I give some example. We have a plant in the flower in Tibet. We call the dangdari. Normally we call the dangdari in Tibetan name. But a lot of Tibetans, they don't know what that means, dangdari, what that means. Then I give the definition to the students, say, dangdari actually, originally from China. Because in China, before, in Tibet, before there's one, like a Chinese, during the Manchu, there's one ambassador, his last name is Dang. And then he brought this flower seed from China then to the Lhasa, and then he planted. And in Lhasa, then this plant, this flower widely, they planted in Lhasa and Tibet, in central Tibet. Then Tibetan people, they don't know that this name in Chinese back from China. Then rather they call Dang Daren. Dang in Chinese called the Dang Daren. Dang is his name, and Daren is the minister or the officials. So then later they become Dangdari in Tibetan name. So I just explain those things to the student. And also I give the homework to students. Go home and then try to find animal or plants which is related to the culture. If there are any folk story or local saying, so then let them to write a conversation about this plant. Also let them to collect those. Then make a homework for me. And so it really helps the student to interest my the biology class.